Guy, what was it like in the early days? You've been running Riverford for 30 years. You built stuff into a really fantastic business. Victoria and I are massive fans. It's not only the fact that you produce this wonderful food, which is organically produced, meat, fish, obviously vegetables, which is delivered to people's homes, but also the fact that you educate us each week with your letters that come with the vegetables, and you've got a few views too.
I do.
How hard was it in the early days? Because I remember reading one of your things saying you were there were times when you were practically weeping in the parsnip fields when they were frozen.
Yeah, I did weep in the fields quite frequently. It's the thing where, God had something personally against me, that he's throwing me all these challenges to overcome. But yeah, no, I do collapsing often just with exhaustion, really, working ridiculously long hours, and when stuff went wrong, I did used to take it very personally. One of the great compensations of getting older is being able to deal with the stuff that goes wrong, and being able to shrug it off, really, and just think, oh, we'll just try again, and not taking it all so personally. I think most people who start their own business work really hard for the first few years, and for the so no exception there, but farming probably is particularly hard. But when you say when it started, I mean, most, I was born to it. My parents were farmers.
Yeah, so you grew up with it. It wasn't, you weren't one of these sort of townies like me with a sort of romantic vision of the smallholding life in your mind.
No, I mean, I did grow up in a house. My mother, it was very, sexist division of labor, but my mother was always cooking and looking after 5 kids and various animals on the farm, and feeding a lot of the farm staff as well, just ridiculously busy. So the kitchen was where it all happened. So food mostly was kind of integral to my life from a very early age. And then outside, as soon as I could get my feet in a pair of wellies, I was out there toddling around, and all I wanted to do was make myself useful, so it was a lot about working, and so idling is not in my makeup, really.
No, well, we should we should get your parents to write a parenting guide, because they obviously did such a good job. I don't know whether your 4 brothers and sisters are sort of equally useful people.
Yeah, they are all quite driven, actually. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a great thing. I mean, I think, thank God that not everyone's like me, because those who do most cause most damage usually. And the world is full of highly driven individuals who have really caused a lot of damage to the world.
Who buggered it all up. Well, I mean, that's a great point. We got a piece by Colin Tudge in the current issue of The Idler, and he's saying, people need to look at work, actually, and look at work ethic and its activity and bothering and interfering, which causes the problems. I think there's a quote from J.B. Priestley saying something like, or even Evelyn Waugh, if all our statesmen had just gone to bed in 1939, there would have been a lot less death. Which is obviously simplistic, but it makes the points, doesn't it, that you're making?
There's nothing more dangerous, really, than the driven individual who believes that he's right, and even more so if he happens to think he's got God on his side, which of course many of people starting with, well, certainly the First World War, they all claim to have God on their side. Most people do when they go to war, don't they? So going back, Tony Blair in Iraq, he thought he was doing God's work, I think.
Yeah, and it's the same with some of these Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. They actually think that they're sort of superior beings, the Mark Zuckerbergs and stuff, because they've sort of become incredibly rich, partly by accident, and just actually basically selling advertising, which is not a very interesting thing to get rich by, but because they're so massive, they think they've been sort of anointed, as one of the sort of preordained leaders of the world.
I'm not going to disagree with that. Yeah.
Well, let's go through the farming year, Guy. This book, as I said, is based on the medieval calendars, where, as I'm sure you know, like the medieval peasant, there were far more small holdings in the medieval period, obviously, than there are now. People looked after themselves, and you might combine a small holding with some sort of a craft. So it would be common, for example, well, let's say we just been down to the Isle of Purbeck. It's full of quarries that each quarry was run by 3 or 4 people. These blokes would also have families, and they'd be growing their own vegetables. They keep a pig and this sort of thing, And it was, I'm probably sort of slightly idealizing it, and that's what everyone says. But actually, there's a lot of writers and anthropologists now who are saying, well, actually, that was true. Certainly before the Reformation, and certainly before the Industrial Revolution, there was a measure more of self-sufficiency. So that's what Victoria and I were sort of trying to kind of recapture in a kind of John Seymour way. When we went down to rent a cottage on the Devon coast, and we sort of feel the season. So if we could start with wood, is wood a subject that you think about? I mean, do you burn wood and not coal? What sort of wood do you burn? How do you dry wood?
We do with the whole house. We live in a big farmhouse, and it is all heated by wood. Every bit of it, the water, and we even cook on wood from September to May. We've got a wood burning essay, and I do love that relationship with the wood burner.
Yeah,
and but when I moved into this house and we renovated it, I did put a lot of thought into. We burn 20 tons, well, certainly 10, going on 20 tons in a cold winter of wood a year. You want to move that as little as possible, and you want to make it as dry. Now I don't burn anything that's not 3 years old, and I never
3 years old.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, well, because this is a great point. I guess sorry, my phone's just ringing. I guess turn it off.
You spend forever cleaning your chimney otherwise.
We got obsessed by getting dry wood, but our problem was that we ordered these loads of logs from local log merchants, and then tried to burn them, and you just get this sort of fizzing in the log burner. And then later I bought a moisture meter, because I think they're supposed to be about 20%, aren't they, the logs?
Yeah.
That's a good burning temperature. We thought leaving a pile of oak or beech uncovered in the sun and the wind for about a year would be enough, but you think it takes longer?
Well, it depends on how much air movement you've got. You probably in ideal conditions, I'm sure you can do it in a year. But this is a really nerdy conversation, Tom.
Yeah, it is, but it's so interesting because I became obsessed by it. But it's a wider issue, isn't it? I mean, we both know Simon Fairley of the Land magazine. Who is very back to the land, and Victoria and I visited 3 or 4 weeks ago Monkton Wild in Dorset, where he lives in a community of sort of 15 or 20 people. They have pigs, cows. It's a circular small farm. They bring in very little inputs from the outside, and it's a very inspiring place. But his thing about wood is that the government's brought in I think it's a new law saying that you cannot burn green wood. You cannot burn wood that's kind of a bit wet inside, which is good. But what you end up doing is buying these in London, buying logs which have been driven probably 200 miles away or something, but which are dry and they've been dried in a kiln. Your wood presumably comes from the immediate locality.
We do have a lot of wood on the farm and a lot of hedges to manage, which have a fair number of large trees in them, and we are slowly moving towards a sort of rotational management of the hedges, so there'll be more firewood to come out of them. But I mean, at the moment, tragically, I mean, it's largely ash, fantastic firewood, but with ash dieback, there is not going to be any shortage of firewood for my lifetime, which is tragic. But
sorry, what's happened to the ash?
Ash dieback is sweeping through the nation. Within a year or 2 or 3 years, I mean, virtually every tree around us is showing signs of it. The sort of really big, strong, field-grown ones, those ones out in the middle of the field seem to be shrugging it off better, but all the ones where they're jammed in close are dying pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Well, to the extent that my brother has gone around and we've cut all the ones down along the hedgerow where they border a road because of the risk. There's just too high a risk of them falling and killing someone.
So what's your favourite wood? What wood would you recommend?
Oh, well, my favorite tree is a beech tree. I mean,
Yeah.
I love almost all trees, but
Mm,
beech, particularly.
mm.
It's funny, I've always hated ash trees.
Well, I thought everyone liked ash because ash is supposed to be the like traditionally the best burning of the woods, isn't it? Because
It's a lovely burning wood, and it's beautiful to split. It splits
mm,
really well, which
mm,
is very satisfying.
mm.
But agriculturally, it's a really robbing tree. I mean, nothing will grow under an ash tree,
Right. Okay.
and whereas an oak,
Mm,
it is much. I don't know. It seems to maybe it roots more deeply,
mm, mm,
and we have, you can see in the fields the grass. Well, I'm rather ashamed to say this. We would never plow under a tree now, but
mm,
I have seen vegetables grow, almost up to the base of a tree, which you should never do because the disturbance will damage the roots. And they'll
mm.
grow comfortably underneath it. So I do have a particular affection for ash, and there's something about the limbs of beech, those clean, and the shade that dapple shade that you get under a beech.